Hi, everyone. Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations with Home program. I'm Jenelle Riley from Variety. Before we're joined by our guests today, I want to let you know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation today is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the SAG-AFTRA Foundation has given nearly $7 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. So if you are a SAG-AFTRA artist and you need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce the cast of Spencer, actors Kristen Stewart, Jack Farthing, Jack Nielen, and Freddie Spry. Hi, thank you all so much for being here.
Hi.
Oh, it's so nice to have the family back together. Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. Congratulations on a beautiful but also terrifying movie. Spencer comes to us from director Pablo Larraín and writer Stephen Knight. I'm curious, how did the story first find its way to you? And I believe we should start with Kristen, because I think you were the first person to sign on. Was there a script that you were able to read? What did you know about this project that made you say yes?
Initially, it was just a conversation that I had had with Pablo about the idea of a movie surrounding this story, but I had no idea that it was limited to the 3-day period. I had no idea how sort of lyrical and embedded the story happened to be. I initially just said, yeah, because I think that he's such an incredible filmmaker, and whether or not we landed on our feet, I thought it was worth the tumble. I was like so down to get to know her. My interaction with her as sort of a figure was pretty limited at that point. It was visceral but limited. I was 7 years old when she passed away, and I knew that this was going to be something that was worth doing before I knew anything about it. Just from the feeling that woman left behind, the shadow that she casts is still so very much with us. And I wanted to peel that back and look at it with somebody so strange. Pablo is a very unique and visionary man. And so I knew that it wasn't going to be a sort of regurgitation of stuff that we've seen before, and that we got to really kind of explore her personally. And then these guys, I've been answering that question for the last like 5 months. Please, someone else answer that question.
Well, actually, can I ask, I'm curious, how do you usually choose your roles? Is it typical that you would sign on to something without a script like that? Or was it complete faith in Pablo?
Well, I mean, I guess technically I did read the script before I signed on, but I was like on the phone with him. I was like, yeah, I knew that this was going to be, to be honest, the script would have had to be really bad for me to say no. And it actually turned out to be very, very good. It was so boldly committed to exactly what it was, in a way that was like incredibly aware of how divisive that could potentially be, but it just needed to have its own curiosities. And it felt like he had to write it, or like something bad was going to happen. And I to do something like this, to do a story about somebody who's so coveted and so widely known, to do it in a remotely self-conscious way, or a sort of self-referential way, would be just embarrassing and useless. And like, I'd rather watch a documentary. And this felt so truly just sort of like loving and protective and curious, and a little bit just sort of audacious and shrieking, and also very, very beautiful and joyous, which those things don't usually hold hands. And they did sort of merrily. And I was very impressed and couldn't wait to step on.
I love that you used shrieking as an adjective. That is so perfect. I'm probably going to steal that. So Jack Farthing, we have 2 Jacks here, so I want to be clear. What was your initial response to the project and the idea of playing Prince Charles?
I mean, yeah, my initial, I guess it came to me with obviously Kristen already on board, and it was Pablo and Stephen. So, I mean, before anything, you're like, okay, this is going to be an interesting, original piece of work. And then, yeah, I mean, you know, the prospect of playing Prince Charles is like, is in a way, it's not really a desirable one. It's not something I've like coveted. I've like, oh, I can't wait till I get that opportunity. But it made like total sense and like was illuminated by the people who were making it and by the script that came with it, obviously. And as like Kristen has been saying, it's like, it's a really unique take and vision and perspective and angle. And that was what was so exciting to me. And in a way also that was what stripped away a lot of the fear of playing a real person who's so familiar and so recognizable, because I knew that we would be liberated, I guess, from impressions, and that it would be more about coming out from behind that. And so all of that initial fear about, oh my God, you know, how do you even approach someone who is so impersonated and so just known and seen, it kind of, by the time we were there doing it, it had fallen away a lot. And I recognized that actually it was going to be quite a personal thing, and it was going to be, so it was just, you know, it's an obviously very exciting project to be part of, and I'm super proud to be part of it.
I mean, a lot has been made of the fact that you're good friends with Josh O'Connor, who played Charles in The Crown. Did you ever compare notes, or is it just something that goes unspoken?
We didn't compare notes. I think that would have been insane. But we did like check in and say, this is funny. And that was about as far as it went. But I adore Josh as a human, but I also think he's so good in The Crown. And I was grateful that this was so different, you know, because it didn't mean that I could leave my worries about how brilliant he is at the door and just jump onto this as like a totally unique planet. Like it was something so different. But no, I love Josh very much. I think he's brilliant.
He's fantastic. Jack, Nielen and Freddie, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this your first movie for both of you?
Yeah, so I'll go first.
Yes,
It was actually my first movie, and so it came to me in the middle of lockdown. So it was all new to me, and it was a very unique experience. And I didn't really know a lot about Prince William before I actually got the part. So yeah, of course I knew him. He was like a figure, but I didn't really like know him like through documentaries and actually watching. But so after I did research, it came to me that this is just such an amazing part and such a unique take on Princess Diana. So yeah, I never really actually before it. This is my first movie, and
wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And was it an audition process? Like, did you put yourself on tape, or did you go in and meet people?
So I didn't have an agent when I first got the audition. So it was basically a lockdown project to me because it was in the middle of lockdown. I got more free time, so I get to do what I actually wanted to do. So one day I just said really that this is what I want to do. And I was audition for Spencer on Twitter, and it was a casting call. So my mum asked me if I wanted to send in my headshot, and I did. So we sent it in, and really the rest is history. Yeah.
You found out about it on Twitter?
Yeah. It's
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Freddie, what about you? How did you find out about this movie?
Well, when I got the audition, I already had an agent. So I got the audition and they really liked me. And when I went back and I hadn't done anything this big before, because the year before we filmed, I did a commercial. And then when I was 6, I did a TV show called Lego Masters. So even though I've been on camera before, it was completely different. So I was really excited.
And was it the same for you? Did you have a tape first? At some point, did you go in and meet these people in person?
Yeah, well, eventually I did, but because of lockdown, you didn't really get a chance to. So I did the audition, and eventually we met, and I had a Zoom call with Pablo, and he said, "Would you like to come to Germany?" And I was like, "Yes." And I couldn't wait to get on set.
At what point did the two of you meet your on-screen parents? Was there ever an audition with them, or did you meet them on set?
Okay, so we actually met a couple of days before filming. So we already had the part when we first met. So it wasn't because of COVID and travel restrictions. We couldn't really meet before actually getting the part and filming because, of course, restrictions. And yeah, if everyone had to meet everyone, it's really messy. But yeah, we met a couple of days before. And
were you fans of Kristen's work? Had you seen any of her movies?
oh well, I saw. Yes.
Actually, I've never seen any of Kristen's movies before. But after the filming, I actually quite recently I watched Charlie's Angels, which is the only one I have seen her in, and she is amazing.
I'm glad you liked that.
And I assume you've seen Spencer, so you've seen another one of her movies.
Yes. That makes it too. Don't worry.
I watched a couple of movies. So I watched Panic Room when Kristen was very young in that.
I look like you in that movie.
Yeah, you were really young. But yeah, I definitely watched a couple. Off the top of my head now, it's running out. But
What else, Jack? What other of my movies have you seen, Jack?
So I watched Cafe Society. Really good. Recently, what else?
Wait, no, I was kidding. You don't have to actually go through that.
Well, I want to ask Jack Farthing. Were you familiar with Kristen's career? Had you seen any of her films?
Nothing at all. No, I was very familiar. Yes, I'm a fan.
Me and Jack and Freddie met in a hotel room in the sort of palace that we were using as our palace. But we used like 2 hotels predominantly, and the first one really did start to feel. We were there for so long; it started to feel very Shining-esque because we were stuck there, but also like less scary because we were having a blast. But walking into that room for the first time really was frightening because if we didn't become friends naturally, if we didn't just all start hanging out and like love spending that time, it wouldn't have been fun to make this movie. And I remember my dialect coach, who's a really brilliant acting coach in general, had us play this game where we like touched each other's fingers and pushed each other around.
It was like you glass straws and like.
Oh yeah.
The whole time, and we couldn't laugh or smile.
Yeah, it was really.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it at all. I was just I couldn't do it at all.
Well, you could lead. You could just push us all into a corner. It was like a 3-headed Ouija board.
I was
Wow.
Interesting.
That's so cool. Before I go any further, I want to remind everyone watching at home that you can put questions for the actors in the chat, and we'll try to get through as many as possible at the end of this. But I do want to talk about, so much has been written and talked about with this family. I'm really curious where you even began with your preparation, because you're playing real people. So maybe you like having material to draw on, but at the same time, some of that material might contradict each other. So do you have to think of them as, characters you're building from your imagination? And let's start with Jack Farthing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a blessing and a curse, having all that stuff. And I think I definitely think it's nice to have something to hold on to feel like you're not scrabbling around. But I also think you've got to pick and choose. And like, obviously with all of this whole family, there is so much material, too much material to think that you can consume it all. And so, yeah, for me, I kind of tried to hone in on his words more than other people's words about him, because I felt like I needed to come with his ammunition, like his feelings about the world. And that would be most useful. So I read stuff that he'd written. I tried to find interviews that were his words. And I've pored over this documentary that he did with Jonathan Dimbleby, where he was trying to give his perspective on his life and everything that was going on, so that I could try and come with him as opposed to with other people's attitude. I don't know. It's not easy. I guess, Kristen had the same mountain. I don't know how you picked and choose what you used.
Where did you even begin?
I loved the biography that he wrote about him too. That was actually one of my that was one of my favorite reads. It's so, hindsight is a strange thing, especially like the salacious nature of the story and how kind of like easy it is to get wrapped up in the drama of it. It was really, honestly, it was just really cool to become also protective of Prince Charles in a way that wasn't, because I was playing somebody who in this time fucking hated him. Sorry, excuse me. But yeah, like really hated him. Yeah. So that was good. This is bad. I'm just gonna sit here in the sun. So yeah, I was not apprehensive about like the amount of research that was available. Pablo was super concerned that I was gonna be sort of derailed in some way or overwhelmed, not able to hold all of it. And therefore, I think actually he just didn't want me to start picking the script apart. But I didn't want to do that because I really loved it. And I understand that something like this is about sort of poetic multiplicity. I love writing and movies that are about people, but I love writing and work that is inspired by people. And she was so inspiring and she got so many engines going while she was alive. Like I thought it was really important to absorb her in a really personal way. Like I thought what I really liked about her, I wanted to pull into the movie. The way that she like touches people affected me. And so I just wanted to take that and try and sort of like by osmosis do the same thing. And whether or not she said something or he said something really didn't matter, because if you kind of just take all of the information and cross-reference the script, nothing is wrong. It all just feels like a sort of projected idea of what it might have felt like, given all of the vast information that we do have. It was weird how actually substantially researched the script. I mean, he apparently has talked to people, which he can't even disclose their names, people that worked in the houses with them, the help, certain people that were very close to them at that time that, they don't want to disclose their identities because this story is just endlessly easy to attack, which is exactly what the movie deals with as well, interestingly. So yeah, I think I completely took everything in as much as I possibly could. And then, as most actors say about playing real people, is you leave it behind and you trust that it found its way into your body physically and into your sort of emotionality naturally. And by the time we got there and started shooting everything, I knew if I hadn't read that book or that book that Pablo was worried about me reading, that I wouldn't feel as close to her. I wouldn't feel like, even if it was just a complete construction fantasy, which it is, because I don't know this woman, my construction and my fantasy is elaborate and I love it. So the research was more about creating something that I could love versus creating something that was going to be correct.
What about the transformation, the physical transformation? I mean, I have to imagine putting on those iconic outfits helped, and your voice, it's not just the accent, which is impeccable. You've completely changed your cadence and, kind of where your register is. Did you work with a coach on that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's his name's William Conacher, and he's just such an incredible artist and actor, even though he says that he doesn't like to act, but like he's just he's also done all of the other Diana projects. He did Diana, he's done The Crown, now with 2 different Dianas. He's me. And we're all different. Like, it's actually really, it does speak to kind of what I was just saying, is we're all drawn to her for really unique and defined personal reasons, even if those reasons are inarticulatable, they're physical, they're emotional, and we're all completely different. He is absolutely amazing. I had so much time to work on it. I worked on for like 4 months via Zoom. It was sad for me at first to think that we couldn't be in the same room together and that it was going to I basically had like 2 weeks with him before we actually started to shoot. But I've never prepared something like this in my life. It's changed probably like the way I will approach my future work. I've always thought that in order to do something really spontaneous and to capture that, it always has to be the first time. Matt is just afraid and not lazy. It's just afraid. And it was so fun to know it like the back of my hand. So when we got there, I could literally just like just be such a human flail. It was so much fun. I mean, this is a SAG-AFTRA Q&A. Just never stop running lines. Just like never ever stop doing it. I used to be like, no, I can't touch the lines because then I want to feel like I came up with it. It really did just feel so good to be obsessively working all of the time, because it's easier. You have to work less, actually.
Yeah, I totally get that. Freddie and Jack N, I'm curious, not only how you sort of researched your roles and prepared for them, but being on a movie for the first time, and particularly the DP Claire Mathon is so intimate and her work is so beautiful. What was it like having that big camera in your face?
So I started by doing research by just generally watching all the documentaries I can find. And yes, I also watched The Crown, but basically just throwing like a big fishing net over it and just bringing it all up. But then you pick the good sources out of all of them, and you just generally refine it down from there. But yeah, I guess that's how I prepared for the character. But yeah, it was a really unique experience with the camera, and it was especially that it was all shot in film. It was very different than your traditional movie nowadays. So yeah, it was very. Because I haven't been on another movie, so this is the only reference that I can actually take it from. But it's very intimate and sometimes can get really close to you in your almost personal bubble, which I think puts your the emotions really onto the camera. Yeah, that's the best way to describe it.
Did it feel like for the first time, like, do you remember the first time that they like called rolling and you were like, oh, now I have to actually, because we'd like worked and like rehearsed a tiny bit, ran some lines, you did the audition, whatever, you played that game with Pablo, but like, because I still, especially on a movie like the first couple of days, my heart literally, like, I can feel it beating my chest plate before we do the first take. Like, you must have just been like,
yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking. Although, to be honest, I wasn't that really nervous when I first got on set, because, so when I first got the role, I was really excited, but then I was nervous at my home because I was worried that the movie wasn't even going to be made because of COVID and travel restrictions. So once I actually got on the plane, got to the hotel, met you for the first time and started filming, I was just completely like over the moon and so happy that I think I actually forgot to be nervous.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's just, but yeah, it was pretty intense.
Freddie, what about for you?
So basically, Harry, for me, I didn't really do much preparation because Harry was basically, he was happy, he was energetic, he was chatty, and basically he was me. So I didn't really have to do that much. I just had to, be me. So it was really relaxed. And I think he had a really special relationship with Diana. And she was also really protective of him. And so he could always keep him happy. And because of that, because she loved him so much, she didn't love him it felt like Harry was a friend, and that she was a friend, and that friendship really helped me focus, and yeah.
Yeah, those are some of my favorite scenes between her and the kids. We have some questions. I'll try to get through as many as possible. And forgive me if I mispronounce anyone's name. This comes to us from Anne. For any of the actors, after playing a real person, do you ever feel defensive of them? Like you're on their team now if they pop up in the news? And actually, I'd love to ask Jack Farthing this because, a lot of people are not necessarily sympathetic to Charles, but did it change your thoughts on him?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I knew sort of nothing about him. I mean, I still I still know nothing about him, even though I've researched him like heavily and extensively. I don't know him, but it has definitely changed. I think the process of researching anyone, whoever they are, is a process of like deepening empathy for them. And that definitely happened with him. and yeah, you see all the things that, you know, like headlines don't capture, and mostly we know people from headlines. And so so it was interesting it's always interesting to just try and really dive deep into someone, and even if it's someone you might feel like you have nothing in common with previously, but to try and find the human beyond the kind of, you know, the royal. So yeah, definitely changed. Yeah.
Anyone else feel protective or defensive of the people you played?
Yeah, of course.
Well, I don't think I did very much, but I thought Harry helped me be a better version of myself. So basically it made me more than I already was. So more chatty, more energetic, more.
Which I don't really know how that's possible.
We have a question from Cole. When working with a director who has such an interesting and specific vision for a film, and they're speaking specifically to the horror tone in the movie, does that vision impact your preparation for these characters and your performance on set? I imagine there were long conversations with Pablo before you even got to set.
I was so shocked by how far he pushed the horror, or, you know, the sort of more surreal elements that felt like completely in her nightmares or fantasies or whatever. His commitment to truly focusing on this person and not getting distracted by other stuff is so, I just think it really takes a lot of focus and discipline. It would be so easy to get lost and be like, oh wait, I want to go look at this interesting thing that's happening. It's like, unless she's looking at it, we're not looking at it.
Yeah.
And I did not know how committed he was going to be to that, nor did I know how scary and shrieky the other bits were going to be. You know, when you read the script, you could imagine the pearl soup scene being something that was just a flash, something that you go like, oh, just imagine if. But instead, her imagination digs to the center of the earth, and you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe the way, even the way that they cut it. Like he showed me that scene kind of halfway through the filming of the movie, loosely assembled by the editor, which ultimately actually is kind of what we've got. And I couldn't believe how long it was. I couldn't believe how extreme and horrific. But when inside of your body, when you have really, you know, the harder felt feelings, they feel literary. They feel like if you were to try and describe them to someone, you'd be like, I felt like my head was exploding. So he just exploded her head. And I did not realize that he was really going to do that. And I think it makes the movie what it is. I think without it, we don't give credence to inner lives. That's what the movie is. It's just like, you know, even if something on the surface appears one way, doesn't make your experience less real. In fact, the opposite, blah, blah. Anyway, I was so impressed with that. I had no idea until halfway through that he was really gonna be so bold.
That's so cool. And we have a question from, I believe it's Terrell, wants to know, when you have to find emotions like sadness, happiness, anger, do you ever think back on past moments so that you can relate to these emotions, or are you able to find them as the scene is shooting? This is for anyone who wants to answer.
I'll answer it. Okay, so I had an on-set coach called Maria, and together offset, we actually worked on Lee Strasberg's method acting. So basically a light version of it by taking past feelings and emotions and actually incorporating that into it. So like generally, like when you feel sad, you try to remember that feeling and then use it during the scenes. So yeah, that's how I did it. I don't know how other people did it, but yeah.
Jack Farthing, what about for you?
I tend to like subscribe to the feeling that you try and find the character's sadness or happiness or depression or anger, rather than finding your own and bringing it with, just because, I don't know. I mean, I guess every situation is different. Every part is different. Every director requires something different, but generally I find like a character and a world, if it's well built, transportative enough for me to be there with them. And I don't feel that I need to, I mean, like, you know, we're always bringing ourselves. Everything I do, I bring like Jack, so much Jack, much more Jack than I think I would be bringing. I'm sure it's always like that. But I never think about it like that. I never think, okay, I'm going to bring a bit of Jack here because Jack's going to be relevant for this bit. It's just like it's an organic thing. And I'm much happier sitting in the imagination of the character than I am in my own, I think.
And Kristen, for you, obviously, we see Diana in so many challenging and difficult scenes. How do you prepare for that? And do you use memories?
I think that conversations about acting start to sound like conversations about living, and it's all semantics. Like, there is no way that I can't be me and Jax can't be Jax, both of them respectively. But like, every person's process is different. There are times where something that I'm doing can kind of evoke a feeling that is undefined, but I know that it has to be based on something I've gone through. There's a reason why I'm drawn to all of the projects I'm drawn to, and the other fellow, you know, artists that I'm drawn to. There are through lines there, and you can always identify them if you want to, but it sometimes isn't necessary because something is so well drawn that you can just be there. So yeah, for this, like, everyone so craves to know, like, why it was sort of more interesting for me to play this person because of parallels that might seem obvious, like the being known by a lot of people and having a lot of pictures taken of you or whatever. There are a million. She's also somebody who is the daughter of two parents. She's somebody who had aspirations and dreams and ideals that didn't necessarily turn out to be what she thought. Like, there are just a million things that every single person walking the earth can relate to. And I find that you'd be really hard pressed to find a character worth playing that doesn't have those things. So, like, no, I totally just, I kind of, like, I could have said what Jack said or Jack said. It's both the same thing.
All Jacks are correct.
Yeah.
Well, again, it is such a beautiful movie. I want to thank you all so much for being here today and talking to your fellow actors, sharing your craft and experiences. Thank you so much. And again, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
This was our first family.
It's so nice to see family together. Yeah.